Scared money don't win money in fantasy football, and you're going to have to make your bets somewhere down the line. You're going to have to shoot for upside somewhere in your draft. And everyone's going to be shooting for upside in the later rounds. In those double-digit rounds, they're going to be pulling for their guys, their running backs, their backup wide receivers. But the middle rounds, when things are starting to get a little dicey with some of these players, some of these veterans who we know their upside's tapped. We know it's not going to happen. But you want that certainty. Maybe there's a chance for you to tap in on some upside. And one player you could look at that you can get a lot of juice for the squeeze if they hit and hit early is Jaxon Smith-Njigba, rookie wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks. Guy was drafted in the first round, had a huge season his sophomore year at Ohio State, blew up there, had huge numbers. Got drafted to the Seattle Seahawks. Now he's with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Geno Smith. This team went off at the running back position. Year prior, drafted Kenneth Walker in the second round. This year, in the second round, they drafted Zach Charbonnet. And then Kenny McIntosh came to them. So we got a lot of competition on this team. This team isn't considered one of the most prolific passing offenses in the league. But why are people still going after this guy? We're seeing him jump in ADP over the last few weeks. He was like a 6th round pick in underdog fantasy. Now an underdog, he's around the late 5th round. But in regular fantasy drafts, come August, when it's time to draft your teams, right before the NFL season, he might be floating a little later. We're just going to have to see how that ADP trends out. But right now, Jaxon Smith-Njigba is that mid-round option who has the draft capital, who has the college production that everyone's clamoring for, and he's balling out in training camp. You cannot say he's not showing off the goods. He's got the route running, he's got the hands, he's got everything you need. And going to the stats here from his collegiate profile, this guy's got everything you want. Has an early breakout age, broke out at 19 years old with a 32.43% market share. In 2022, barely saw on the field due to injury, so we have to throw that out the window. Also, in 2021, during his sophomore season, 3.25 yards per team pass attempt. Very elite, high-end numbers there. Had 4.01 yards per route, so he's efficient. He's efficient, owns a large market share of the team's passing production. Had a 141.8 QB rating when targeted. He is an efficient wide receiver. Played mostly in the slots. Got a lot of those slot targets. Olave and Garrett Wilson were in and out of the lineup a little bit. Also had that big game against Utah against a hurt secondary. Gotta mention that, but did blow up, take over. That's what good players have to do in those situations. They do have to take over, and he did that. But we have a player here that played well. Outproduced Garrett Wilson and Olave. Olave missed some games. Garrett Wilson missed some time too. And Jaxon Smith-Njigba took advantage of that. Played a lot of snaps in the slot, like I already stated. But it still happened. It still happened. He was still productive. He still put up 1,600 yards. Still caught 95 balls, damn near 100. Still had that huge game in the Rose Bowl. That all still happened. He was still productive. And then if we missed out on last year, that didn't happen. This was the last time we had a full season of Jaxon Smith-Njigba. But looking at his collegiate profile here, 6 foot 196, still young at 21 years old, drafted in the first round. Something you want to see. This stuff's from playerprofiler.com, so check that out. Comp to Doug Baldwin, which kind of makes sense in the slot, but can play on the outside too. Good route running, creates separation, sticky hands, very nuanced. The athleticism still there, though. Good agility score. More than fast enough to get the job done with a 4.57 40-yard dash. Not a blazer. We all know that from the tape. But he's got more than enough speed to do it. The production's what matters. He's been productive from a counting stat standpoint and a market share standpoint, and at a young age, early in his career, in a tough offense to produce on. Even his freshman season, he had a couple big catches. But we're looking at him, and why you need to draft him is the upside. It's unknown, first-round pick. You don't want to miss out on that. And if you missed out on wide receiver early in your draft, you don't want to get those mid-round jabronis who does not have that upside. You need to shoot for the gusto there. This is a guy you can get. Wide receivers also getting thin around 5th, 6th, 7th round, wherever he's going in your draft, you may want to look at him. But there's also reasons you don't need him. You might be stacked at wide receiver, and now you're in the middle rounds. You're in that back end. Running backs getting juicy with those backup running backs with upside. There's also other wide receivers to look at. Jen Dotson, George Pickens, Gabe Davis, Mike Evans. Then the tight ends. Kyle Pitts, George Kittle. There's a lot of meat on the bone here, and you can go multiple different directions here. There's a lot of fluidity to look at here when you're talking about Jaxon Smith-Njigba. But overall, if you're needing wide receiver in the middle rounds and you're needing upside, this is a player to look at. This is a player to gamble on. You're talking about untapped potential. We don't know much about this guy. He has been balling out every day in practice. Look at the clips. Look how he's performing. Strong hands, good route running, getting downfield. He's going to be in the slot a lot. He's going to get his amount of targets. Look for him to get some opportunity in this offense. DK Metcalf's going to take heat off him. Tyler Lockett's going to take heat off him. You may see the competition there. That might scare you off. But again, that competition is going to allow him to come at a cheaper price tag as well. And a lot of players are going to burn you in the middle rounds. So why not get burnt shooting for upside? Because you're going to have to gamble somewhere. And shooting for upside in the later rounds is not gambling, because everyone's going to be doing that. The middle rounds is probably the perfect time to do so, because you want to be consistent. Rounds 1, 2, and 3. You want to feel certain about those picks. Then you're getting 4, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that range. A guy like Jaxon Smith-Njigba is a player you're going to want to look at to shoot for upside. If you want a player at the wide receiver position that goes nuclear that nobody was thinking about, and that's a player that could be doing that this year. Could be totally wrong, but again, we're talking about gambles. We're talking about practice. Jaxon Smith-Njigba's in that category right now, and that's a player you want to look at. That's a player you need to look at or need to fade, depending on where you're at in your structure of your draft. Because when we're talking about strategy, it's how the draft falls to us. There's also players that'll fall past the ADP that you get at a value. There's also players that just jump off the board, and it's just however the draft goes. But this is a player you need to pay attention to. Pay attention to him through the rest of camp, because he keeps making plays. Let me know what you think about Jaxon Smith-Njigba down in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Catch you on the next video.